Okay, all right. Well, we'll dive right into it. I mean, obviously, not good enough here of a performance this past weekend. That falls on me. I got to do a better job of getting our guys, in positions to help us win. That's first and foremost. I do want to give Coach Gannon credit. They did a great job of game planning. I think, the offensive staff, Arizona really had some great schemes and ideas and got us into some different sets and looks, adjustments, both in coverage and front, and really did an outstanding job of taking advantage of those situations. So, those are things that I got to focus on and make sure that we get fixed and corrected, which we will. Our guys, they play really hard. They're out in the field competing, and it's up to us as coaches to get them in a situation where they can go out and perform, the level that we need them to help us win. So, like I said, obviously the run game is going to be the first and foremost place where we got to start. I think, they did a good job of using a lot of runs that have caused issues, for us that, we're going back and making sure that we have those tightened up and fixed from that standpoint. Run fits are a big part of defense and really, someplace you want to start from a defensive philosophy standpoint to make sure that you can stop the run. I think it's critical at this time of the year. And, no different than the other side of the ball is trying to run the ball. We've got to be able to stop it on defense, and that's got to be our focus from that end to get that, handled. And they did a good job. There's some good scheme stuff in there that they hit us with that, it'll be good for us. It was good for us to see now and that we can go forward and make sure that we have it tightened up as we move forward here. So, that's something that we'll work on this week and get ready as we push forward for the Giants, that we know they'll be looking at that film also and trying to use some of those runs, which they had actually some of those in the game that we played against them. We just handled them a little bit in some different looks. So we'll look at that also and kind of how we played some of those in that game the first time we had them. But, not good enough. That's on me. We got to do a better job there, especially with the run.
So if the run fits are still an issue in week 17, is that not being coached right, or is it personnel related?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's going to start with me, from that standpoint, making sure that we're, have everybody understanding of how we want to get it fit and taken care of when we see those different looks. Sometimes it's a little bit of a different window dressing to it, and the run may look a little bit different than it actually is. Still maybe the basic run that we've played before, and that's some of the stuff that you want to try to, eye control and make sure that we're looking at the right keys from that. And that's from a coaching standpoint, we really want to make sure that our eyes are in the right place, and I got to make sure that we're all on the same page with that.
If I could follow up too.
Sure.
You're saying it's on you, obviously. You've only been the defensive coordinator for like the last 3 games. So how hard have you tried to change that now in these last 3 weeks?
As far as the run fits themselves,
yeah.
or no, we're obviously working to improve the defense as we go through the season, and different problems present themselves at different times of the year. That is definitely true. Some of the runs that we saw early in the year, are different that we see later in the year. Sometimes that moves, or something may happen through the course of a season or a game or a particular week that new ideas come up that a team that we haven't maybe seen twice, like we're seeing the Giants twice, and that comes up. That's a little bit of a different look. So that is all on me. I got to make sure that we're good in the run game every single week based on the different runs that we're getting that week and what we've seen on tape from them. Like I said, give Coach Gannon credit. He's got good knowledge of the defense and the things that that are hard or difficult for us, and we got to tighten those back up.
Along the lines of that question,
Yep.
Have you found it difficult to put an imprint on this defense, given that the framework of it was already well established before you took over?
Yeah. I think I said before, I think, this is it's our defense. It's something that we've, been working on. That's the players and the coaches. It's been a collaborative effort, I would say, from the start on all of that. And, it's not uncommon during the season for things to shift or change from what you're seeing from opponents. It's interesting. Sometimes you see them in like blocks. You might see like a similar offense like 4 weeks in a row or 3 weeks in a row, and then go to an offense that's maybe a little bit different than what you've seen. And now here's some new different ideas or thoughts that come at you defensively from a different way, or something different from a scheme standpoint that you have to adjust to and get fixed. So from that aspect of it, I think it's always, been that collaborative group effort with all of it, and certainly the run is the biggest focus this week that, we've got to get fixed and handled, sure.
What about the run fits made that consistent regardless of what you guys fielded? Because it seemed like that would make it difficult to adjust in the middle of the game. What made it consistent across the board?
Last week?
Yeah.
For what they were doing? Yeah, they had some really good, different kind of run plays that we see, right? There's zone runs, which are usually, base man blocks or combination blocks that usually move in a particular direction. And then scheme or gap runs or divide the defense type of plays where they can really try to, just put a hard edge divide into it, and then you're pulling backside defenders into the front side to try to fit as they're bringing extra people over to the side of the play. And those are always the hardest, those scheme run fits and kind of how you're handling the different pullers and things like that, which we saw. They did a really good job, and they did them both closed and open, which was something they did. And then they built the formation so that, it may look like a closed formation, so you're thinking maybe this type of run, and then they built it a certain way, gave it a window dressing, and then it became an open side run with still the scheme, divide the defense type of fit into it. And that's where, as a coach, my job is I got to make sure that we're seeing the play correctly in the eyes and everything is in the right direction first and foremost. So that's why I've got to do a better job of that to allow those guys to play fast and fit those aggressively like we want them to.
Hey, Matt, the last 3 games, one common theme has been the second half. I think 17 points in Seattle, 22 against the Giants, 29 Sunday. What are you seeing differently? What's happening that's causing like the leakage in the second half where it wasn't a problem in the first half?
Yeah. You know what? It's a great question as far as, I think the guys have done a really good job. We've come out and played aggressive in the first half. And I think, for me, when those things happen, I always kind of just, I've got to put it back on myself to make sure that we're getting the right calls in or we're getting the right plays out there for them. Sometimes they make adjustments, and then we got to make our adjustments too in those situations. And then situationally, in the second half of the football game, there's so much more that comes in from a situational standpoint, the clock, the time, the down and distance, and those are things I got to keep just doing a good job of making sure that I stay in front of to allow the guys to go out there and handle those when they come up. And it comes fast in the second half, and I've got to do a better job with that, certainly.
If I could just follow up,
Yeah.
Do you sense that guys are wearing down? Guys have played a lot of snaps this year. Do you sense there's any of that late in games?
Yeah, I don't really sense that at all. Our guys work really hard, play very aggressive. They play fast. They work hard during the course of the week to get their bodies right and be ready for game day. I don't ever feel that on the field. I don't ever see that. I think that, I give our players a lot of credit and a lot of just, I admire the way that they come in every single day and they work and they study and they, they got to delete all the information from the week before, start over, rebuild, go, put the effort into practice, understand, we're seeing a different offense, we're seeing a different scheme, we're putting in new install or whatever it may be for that week game plan wise. And every day is pretty regimented, whether it's the early down day to third down to red area, and then just process all that at a high rate and then go out and play it on the field. It's for me as a coach, I just look at our players and marvel at how much they can handle. It's really, fascinating to me. Sometimes you sit in a film room and you're like clicking through plays, and as a coach, you watch the tape all day long, and maybe I've played that meeting in my mind about 5 times before I got in there, and then you sit in there for the first time with one of our players, and they're just rattling off the information that you just gave to them 30 seconds ago. I understand it's the NFL. I understand these are the greatest athletes and the best football players in the world, but at some point, I also sit there and I'm like, it's pretty cool, like how they can do all that. It's pretty impressive to watch these guys when they perform at that elite level. Like all of us, we don't always perform at our best all the time, but it's that part of the process and what these guys do to prepare and get ready and how they play on the game. I always admire that a lot. I really do. Yep.
Do you look at? I'm sorry. Do you
No,
look
it's okay.
at it like this is kind of like a 2-week project? getting ready for the playoffs, or do you need to see like progress against the Giants and everything? How do you kind of approach these next 2 weeks with that?
Yeah. First and foremost for me is always, it's going to be the Giants. We have to obviously go out and everybody wants to play well. Everyone wants to go win. I think that's what's most important for us. But certainly we have to fix the things that came up last week. And those are our focuses, I think, before you look down the road past that. I just think our focus has got to be us and then our preparation, getting ready to go play well this weekend. It's the Giants. This is old school fun. I mean, I know I'm new to the division, but I'm a huge football fan. And if you love football, you talk NFC East football, Giants, Eagles, like all this stuff, like that's exciting to me. That's fun. Let's go out there and play the game and hopefully go play well. So I enjoy all that part of it. So I just focused on the week from that standpoint. Yep.
Hassan Reddick, about a quarter of Kyler Murray's dropbacks, he was in coverage.
Yep.
I guess what's the rationale behind his usage of that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, again, game plan wise, I think they did a good job in some of those, and I'll come back to that and kind of got us in some situations. I'm always conscious of making sure that I get our guys that can rush as much as we can, and sometimes the game dictates or the personnel packages dictate a little bit differently in those situations. Sometimes the hash can dictate a little bit on that too, where the ball is lined up. I think that's where I can do a better job of understanding that maybe we got caught in a string of plays, and sometimes it happens, like if you're playing really long series, sometimes it's easier to correct that stuff. If it's a quicker series, you come to the sideline, you're looking at it, you're like, okay, hey, we need to do more of this. You get caught in a long series, sometimes that becomes a little bit more difficult. So I got to do a better job in that situation of saying, okay, hey, I got stuck in this, or we got stuck in this, let me change it. Let me get, certainly a guy like Hassan in the mix where I think he can help us. Other parts of the game where that may have occurred, honestly, he's probably dropping into position to help his teammates. He's really, really good at it in the situations where they got us in some spread and some empty and kind of put us in some space game, which was good on their part, certainly from a scheme standpoint, and created some extra space there for the coverages and for the quick pass game, which is, they were getting the ball out fast. So he was doing a great job of being, like he always is, a great teammate of helping his teammates out in that space and not, having them having to cover more when the ball was coming out as fast as it did. So certainly a better job by me, I think, in those longer drives of recognizing that in the drive itself, as opposed to, we get to the sideline, we look at it, and it's like, okay, hey, let's change this, let's do this, let's call this, let's move it here in that situation. We had a lot of too many long drives in the game, and that's where I can change up.
Where's that
How much uncertainty is there about personnel right now, specifically at linebacker? You've sort of been there. You got Zach still waiting to come back. And how much do you know what you're going to have when you get to wherever you are in the playoffs in terms of who's going to be where? You got Slay coming back, and how's that going to affect?
Yeah. I'll probably focus on just this week, for right now. And just, as we go through the week, we're always having great conversations. I think Nick and Howie do an amazing job of managing the roster and making sure that we have everything that we have and the team has everything that it has to give us a chance to go win each week. I've been in those situations, certainly, from that chair, and it's not easy when you look at the totality of the team and what you think helps you week in, week out. That's why I think, in our position as coaches on our side of the ball, it's always important for us to make sure that the players have flexibility in what they can do. And not only does it put stress on the opponent, to try to figure out what's in the game and how we're using those guys, but probably the biggest adjustment I had to pro football 20 years ago when I came into it is that the game day roster is only what it is. It's only so large, and you have to have guys that can cover other responsibilities, and that game day roster is going to change week in, week out based on what you need and based on injuries and things like that. So, we always try to maximize everybody's ability and what they can do and the roles that they can play, and we just take it week by week, and so just focus that on this week and see where we're at. And as we go forward, we'll see where the rest of everybody else is as they come back as we get ready to go forward.
There was a third and two that was completed in front of Eli Ricks where they were playing, outside corners were playing well beyond the sticks. How do you want them to defend that?
Yeah. Was that early in the game?
Yeah.
Right. I think, not the specifics of the coverage for that one, just in general. But, some of those where we're kind of off on those and we're playing maybe certain patterns that we've seen on tape and things that they do. Sometimes you play zone coverage when you think they're going to run man beaters. You play man when you think they're going to be in zone, and you can tighten up. And a lot of that you try to go off of, whether it's analytics or statistics or what you're seeing on tape and kind of how they, have tried to handle those areas of the field. Certainly, third and shorter is always a little bit more difficult in those. You play zone and there's going to be some space. They can have, quicker throws, balls coming out faster. You play man, there's a lot more bunch, condensed, picks, rubs, things like that happen. So when you're in the zones and you're in some of those different coverages, you just have to really try to match as quick as you can and as tight as you can. A lot of times that falls on some of the underneath coverage. I think certainly for the standpoint of those plays, that particular play, I can probably put us in a better call, and help us in that situation. And whether we're going to be in zone or man, allow us to be a little bit more heavy on some of those quicker throws, if that's going to happen in that situation, and try to help us out a little bit better when that comes up.
We'll do
Yep.
a couple more, please.
About Reddick and coverage, whether it was Reddick or Graham or Smith in coverage, they completed every pass in those situations. Why don't you think those situations were working, and is that causing you to rethink how those players are being used in those situations?
Yeah. Going through every single one of those passes, I mean, obviously if they catch them all, it's not great. So that's got to be on me from that standpoint. If they're completing the ball, it depends on the situation of, was it a short pass, a quick completion, a tackle? Did we keep them in a longer situation down and distance wise? Those are guys that certainly, with Hassan and with BG, I mean, we want them rushing as much as we can, and getting after the quarterback. And, sometimes the ball comes out really fast in those situations too, and it kind of negates it in general. Hard for us in the game, I think, maybe if you look at the game itself, when you're trying to stop the run and they have a balanced offense from that aspect of it, you're caught in between, and caught in between as a play caller of trying to help the guys as much as you can and help the plays that we're seeing as much as you can in those situations. And whether it's, man or zone or fronts or packages or 4 down, 5 down, different looks, you're trying to give the offense something that causes them issues to slow them down a little bit. And certainly in the game, that's something I wasn't able to do, and that's where I've got to just do better. I've got to slow them down a little bit. So, as we are trying to dictate the game on defense as much as we can, we got to get in front of it a little bit better than what I did in the past game.
A few times here during the past few weeks, missed tackles have been described as uncharacteristic, but it's becoming fairly frequent, relatively speaking. How do you fix it at this point in the season when you have a walkthrough on Wednesdays and you're not having the same cadence that you might have during training camp?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think with all fundamentals, and kind of where you're at in football, and I think that's the. When you watch the season, you watch the NFL, I think that's probably a great thing to look at through the course of the league is, you look at fundamentals, you look at all sides, all three phases, and teams that are still working on the fundamentals, you can definitely tell, you can see whether it's blocking, tackling, catching, running, all that stuff. And then teams that, aren't able to do that, I think, our thing with the tackling this weekend wasn't up to, what we want it to be, and I've got to make sure that we re-emphasize and do a good job for me when I schedule and the individual periods in practice and making sure that we're focusing on the fundamentals of tackling, because you can still focus on it without necessarily having to have the physical side of it, because we are trying to take care of their bodies. We're late in the year. 2 weeks ago against the Giants, we tackled extremely well, in that game, and that's something that I've got to make sure we keep the focus on each week, of going and making sure our approach angles are good and that our hips and ankles and knees are bent in the right direction. We're, leveraging the ball properly and we're not getting, out of alignment from that standpoint, and our pad level is in the right place and our eyes are in the right place when you tackle, and we're wrapping appropriately and driving through. And those are certainly things that you can walk through. And I think with the change, and this probably goes back to, we kind of changed practice in the CBA and all the rest of it. I think some of the stuff that's out there product-wise that we have, that we use, the tackling donuts, things like that, where it's not always body-on-body contact, but we're still working those fundamentals. And you can do them in walk-through paces. Those really help. And I've got to make sure that we do that every week. Yep.
Thanks, sir.